Hello, everybody. Good evening. Professor Lima here with one of the AU talks. Today I have a very special guest, one of our alumni, Ivan Suarez. And Ivan is a super duper expert in cybersecurity, and he's going to talk to us about what's going on and how users, not necessarily IT people, but any user could protect themselves and do better in times that we're expanding our networks, we are exposing too much of our data, hackers are all over the place, and we just have too many dangers around us. So first of all, welcome, Ivan. It's always a pleasure to see you,
Thank you for
back
having me.
here. And tell us a little bit about, you're the technical operations and cybersecurity manager of ShifPixy. Tell us about what you do. Tell us a little bit about ShifPixy, what's going on, what kind of work you guys do, and we go from there.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being here, and yes, it's great. It's been a while since I've been here. So I'm the technical operations and security manager for ShifPixy. I've been there with them for a little bit. We do a lot of things. We're a technology company first, and we are a leader in a very interesting industry. We are in many different spaces. To give you an idea, we are not your traditional staffing company, which we're not. We are kind of the Uber type of environment of what you call staffing. People can download our app, completely onboard into the environment, and they can see what's available out there in terms of jobs. They can apply, interview, the whole process. And then they can pick jobs, see time slots, and start working. And the beauty part of it is they basically are an employee.
Right.
And as long as they work their hours and they work their time, they have benefits. They have everything like a regular employee.
Right.
But they are a shifter for us. And for everybody else, it's just a shifter. But we're also in the AI space. We're in the gamification space. We're in the cloud kitchen space. We're in so many different areas that it's incredible what we do. And I say that because we have our labs. We have where we're building these incredible kitchens and these incredible environment where we're building these food brands and developing these game brands where you'll be playing your games with others, and you guys want to order food? Let's do it. Now we're playing our game. All of a sudden, we order food. You might be somewhere else.
Right.
Your partner and everybody else are ordering food. You guys get your food at the same time because we ordered together in our game. And these games are all available for everyone to use. And it's all part of the whole process, part of our development in our AI space and everything we're doing. So everything that's coming together, everything we're putting together is a really encompassing environment. It's a fun place. And what people don't realize in my area, since it's what we do in technology, like I said, we're technical operations and security, we're a team environment. It's not just me, it's the team, the total team. I'm one component of the team. And I say that because I bring a special type of, I guess you can say, experience. I come from a background in the military, which you know from the many years, and a very strong understanding of that structure piece and a strong understanding of the text piece. But with that, I also bring the experience I learned here, I learned at other environments, and I bring that into this environment. And it brings a new mindset. And as we're gonna go further with these questions, I can kind of give you an idea what I mean by this.
Right.
So security as what it is you're gonna realize that we are very, very forward and we're constantly pushing the envelope on then what's next, what new space we can need to protect, what new area we need to look at, we're constantly pushing the next piece. We're very highly focused on our trainings, our employees and people, and our environment, and at the same time, making sure that it's an environment that we can sustain. Because it only takes one person to make a mistake, and then all of a sudden it's over. So we're trying to do the best, and like I said, no one's perfect, but it's the ability to be able to catch these things and see these things and do the best you can.
So tell us a little bit more about, because I find it fascinating, the gamification, right? Which is something that some people get it, some people still don't get it. But tell us a little bit how ShifPixy is doing regarding gamification.
Well, we're developing our own games, and it's bringing the food ordering process, and by bringing the food to different spaces, where in the States and other maybe further. We never know.
Right.
Where it can be brought to the people closer.
Right.
And if you want to order the sandwich, the burger, this or that, it's closer to you. And you're playing the game. You're playing, our different games that we have. Eventually, you're gonna order food, but you're gonna get tired. You want something to drink. You want something to eat. That's the whole process.
Right.
So that's where the whole gamification comes in. And you're gonna play the game, and you're gonna earn points. You're gonna earn tokens.
Right.
And loyalty.
So you get engaged with the users.
Exactly.
They got all this motivation to participate, and you build probably more audience, right? More engagement of people, more loyalty as well, right? And that has working. And one thing I want to tell the audience to make sure that they understand, ShifPixy has been in our career, fairs.
Oh yeah.
And I always count on you to come. And the next one is going to be in August, so I'll invite you over again. And it's a great opportunity to have you back because a lot of the students can know more about ShifPixy. So you guys are at headquarters is here in Sunrise. There is a location in Irvine, California. Another one here close to the airport, which is labs, right?
Our labs, correct. That's where we do a lot of our. We're doing our food brands there. We do a lot of our prototypings, a lot of things there. Our corporate headquarters is in Sunrise, and we have a lot of our development in Irvine. But we are, family. We're a great team. We're a great environment to work with. And what I enjoy about working there is, it's a fun environment,
right,
where you get to not just learn, but you get to play in a new technology space, where we're at the edge of what's not there,
right,
but it's going to be there.
Yeah, that's a great opportunity, right, to be in touch with things that are growing and becoming more. And a technologist always likes to learn and study, right, and get involved hands-on and do things, etc. I think it's the DNA of a technologist. You can be an IT person, engineer, mechanic, or whoever, right, that has a technical mindset. You like the semicolon. You like things to work properly. You like the connection, how they work. So I think having a company that can give you that opportunity is a big differentiator.
Oh, yeah.
And again, you had the opportunity to work in such a technical environment, also with cybersecurity and what we call online hygiene. So it's a great combination, right? Because you see the deep technical and how that connects or is around or with, above, beyond, below cybersecurity, which is an area we're going to talk today. And tell us a little bit more about cybersecurity. What's going on with this IoT? Things are growing, becoming a lot more connected. So we open to more weak links, right? So what's going on?
A lot. IoT is growing at an exponential rate. If you really look at what IoT is becoming, you have your Alexas, you have your Google Nest, you have all these different devices that are out there. And if you really think about the vast majority of what it is, there's a major problem. There is no regulatory authority out there that's controlling it.
Right.
The government is just now getting involved. If you really think about it, NIST, which if you know about NIST is the and that is they're now creating a regulatory control for this.
Right.
For years, it was only CE and the FCC. FCC only cared about the communication.
Right.
CE only cared about the electronics.
Yeah.
Who's governing data?
Right.
Nobody. So everyone's complaining about, my data. Nobody controlled it.
Right.
It was always Wild West.
Yeah.
So for years, you had your Alexas and your Fire Sticks and this and that. You had all this great stuff. Where's all your data? It's always been exposed. So IoT has been one of those things where it's been vastly growing. We're almost at the point where IoT is almost doubled in population for the world. And if you really think about it, we're about to cross over a major number. It's going to be, in the next few years, it's going to exponentially grow.
Right.
So we're going to be overpopulated with IoT devices. And here's a funny fact. Most attacks being used today are not being used with computers as botnets. It's IoT. Because if IoT is not being used accurately, if it's not being done with these according with these different things, guess what? They're not being regulated. They're not being controlled. They're not being updated. They're not being maintained. They're not being firmware updated. They're not default passwords. They're not being well organized. I can just go online, find default password, log in. Now it's part of my botnet. I can use it and point it and attack you. It is not that hard. Shodan, if you go on Shodan right now, and if you know what Shodan is basically, it's the Google search of IoT. You can find SCADA systems. You can find oil tankers in the ocean right now. If you go on Shodan and you look for password, comes right up. You'll find IoT devices that have default password. Eventually, and if you really want to get really into the whole security piece, Google dorking,
Right.
Google hacking database,
Right.
how to use Google in a search engine methodology. In URL, find this. In this, find this. And then you can look for example, in the URL, find printer/main.html. It'll find every single printer available in the world that's openly available to the internet.
Right.
Look for default password, you're in.
Right.
Guess what? Those are all exposures. These are all different things that are easily attackable, easily compromisable. But how do we defend it?
Exactly. And that's the idea. The regular users, right? But like people, middle age, older people, etc. How these, even young people, right? How they give them the sense of reality in terms of giving them protection, what they should do. That's why we have these, cyber defense, online hygiene, right? You mentioned some of them, but give me, for example, 3 of them that are in your top of your mind, for example, for anybody.
If I was to say the top 3 things I would do right now, first thing, I get a VPN.
Right.
MFA and a good password.
Right.
On top of that, I would say encryption. I'd say 4. Encrypt your system. Get a good password. Get a good password manager. Get a VPN, and of course, even backups. I mean, it's kind of hard to say 3. Jeez, because you need them all. Because if you don't back up your data, if they take my phone, where's my data? I need a backup. If it's encrypted, great. It took my phone, but it's encrypted. I don't have my data anymore. So I still need my phone. I still need my backup. If it's encrypted, they can't get it from me. So encryption and backup are key.
Right.
A VPN protects me from somebody getting into my phone.
Right.
So that's 3. And then MFA protects me from my accounts. And a password manager helps me by not storing passwords.
Right.
Because here's the other thing we haven't talked about. Why you need a password manager? Because if you don't use a password manager, by storing passwords in your browser, you realize that all you got to do is talk to the Java console on the web browser remotely, and it will dump all the passwords. That's the Mac keychain. That's the Windows, Chrome, Safari. That's your Brave. That's all your browsers will just dump the password. All your passwords. So if you like saving passwords in the browser, start rethinking about it. It's not hard, and it's not encrypted. It's protected in a database, but it's not encrypted. So then you start looking at it from a different aspect now. How secure are you really?
Right.
There's a website called Wiggle online. It's called wiggle.net. If you were to go to it, every single Bluetooth device, every single wireless SSID is mapped right now. Every single cell phone tower. If I can find the SSID, how hard do you think it is to find the password?
Right.
It's not.
Right. Exactly. And as I said, today I was just reading that company Reddit they suffer a ransomware attack. And now they have the attackers are asking $4.5 million to return the data. Otherwise, they go public, right?
Yeah.
And that's another thing that, in terms of challenges, right? For example, I would tell you one thing that one of the people that I know came to me, and a student as well, that he sent an email saying, he got an email saying, I know your password, I know we're going to share everything we have from you. And the person got very nervous and called back that number that was. And that was exactly what the people were looking for. The other one I see very common is they say, I have a package for you that is coming, or I have an invoice, the invoice needs to be paid. And people look at the invoice, that's quite a chunk of money. They open the invoice, when they open the invoice, they're way too late, right? So simple things like...
well, that's when it comes to phishing. What I would say is when those phishing emails, you need to look at the actual email. Don't click on the email, look at the sender, hover over the sender, look at the email that's coming from. It could say, let's say, for example, let's say it's a bank. Let's say Bank America, let's say, I don't know, whatever bank, TD Bank.
Right.
If you hover over the name and it says something, and it's odd, something weird domain, then it's not the right bank. That's not it. Or if you get a package coming from FedEx, but it's FedEx and it looks a little weird, It's not real.
Right.
You know, another thing is also don't download your emails to your desktop. Don't use an email client on your computer, because now whatever it's in that email that's actually a payload, now it's on your computer.
Exactly, yeah.
Keep it online. If it's online, I guarantee you, Microsoft, Google, all those systems, they have an antivirus. They have systems tracking it. Report it as a phish, report it as spam, let them scan it, let them do what they do. If they find it to be clean, you'll get it back. If it's really your package, trust me, they'll get it back to you.
Right, exactly. And the other thing I was going to tell you about is these for example, we talk about phishing and vishing and ransomware. The problem is there's so many things, right, that are out there today. People usually refer to these common users, right, regular users, they say virus. But I tell people virus is just one of the malware categories, right? There's so many others, right? And sometimes the malware doesn't do much. They just want to spy on you, like a spyware. It's going to spy you, get information from you. One thing I wanted to ask you about is the cookies, the famous cookies, right? Tell us, because a lot of times people see the security certificate of this website is not trusted. So we should never, do not go to the website, but tell us a little bit more about the website, about the cookies, because cookies are always a mystery to a lot of people, right?
Okay, so cookies is basically, it's a token. It's like someone giving you a ticket and says, here, this is your ticket for identifying you to come into this location. That cookie identifies you with a number and a timestamp. When the timestamp expires, you're no longer identifiable, and it requires you another cookie, another token. What happens on most of these sites is if I might be able to capture your cookie, I can impersonate you.
Right.
That's a problem. Now, if I'm on a website like Amazon or a secure website, now I can impersonate you and complete transactions, because that can be you. But if I'm on other sites, so for example, you talked about the lock on the secure site. You really think the lock is the best way to go? Do you realize that there's other ways of masquerading a website being secure by just using a program like ngrok, Fiddler, or any other kind of man-in-the-middle tactic to hide and let you think you're secure? You really think you're secure, but you're not. You're being shown a secure certificate. It's not real. You got to hover over it, click on it, check if it's valid, look at the certificate, it matches the name of the website. If it does, there's a good chance. And check if it's still valid, the date.
And those are the things, Ivan, that I found a challenge, very challenging when you run an IT organization, dealing with users. We were talking a little bit at the beginning. The business of IT and the IT business, now the convergence of users becoming power users, they're more connected, they're working from home, they're working remotely, they're connecting applications, when they're traveling different countries, so doing transactions, doing sales, etc. So I always tell people, training is one thing, but training not necessarily builds awareness, right? And the security awareness that we're going to go to the population of users on a given organization, I find it extremely challenging. That awareness that needs to exist, right?
Well, that's where you do training. That's why you consistently keep reminding the team, listen, this is what's going on. You consistently send reminders, do trainings, do little one-off little things. Here's a little video. Here's a little kind of like right now we're doing something, and you kind of let the people. You show them. You do like small group trainings, and you educate them on what's going on, the new threats, the new tactics, the new methods, and then on top of that, you also build mechanisms to help protect against these things. You can build so much security tactics behind the scenes, but at the end of the day, the real tactic is the user. And educating them on what they need to be aware of, that's going to help you. One other thing I do is you need to make sure that they're aware of what they're clicking. Right. Make them aware of what they're doing. Why I say MFA. You realize that Uber was compromised a few months ago, right?
Right.
Why do you think Uber was compromised? They were compromised by MFA fatigue. They had MFA. They had everything. They met every compliance. They did everything right. Why did they compromise? Because the developer in another place was consistently getting pinged on MFA. He was logging in, doing work, doing his thing, but his phone kept going off on MFA. and he didn't understand why. So he thought maybe it's me. Okay, so he accepted it. It was really somebody else that was trying to log in as him, because he saved his username and password on a GitHub repository, and they were trying to log in as him. So when he accepted it, they automatically gained access, and there you keep going.
Right.
So there's so many things that are out there, and so many mistakes that we're making. But we're making things available. We're sharing so much, and we want to be out there. We want to share. We want to be public. We want to just extend, but we're not realizing what we're giving up.
Right.
And sometimes it's best to kind of hold back a little bit and be careful. The enemy's listening. The enemy's watching.
Yeah, and I've been to a couple of cybersecurity conferences, and it's interesting because the language has become very almost like a defense, almost like a military language, right, about the surface, attack surface, etc. And it's almost like they consider the organization a live mechanism, which is, to some extent it is, and it's being contaminated. And what are we going to do to protect that?
Yeah, zero trust.
So exactly, yeah.
You got to treat the environment like it's already been compromised, and
Right.
you can't trust anything. You got to start going layer by layer, and then eventually, once you've confirmed that this is clean, move forward and move forward and move forward. And once you've confirmed the entire environment's good, then you keep going.
Right.
And even then, you go back and double check it.
Right.
And it's never over. You go back again and do it again. Because just because the attacker could be there, on average, they say this is the average. An attacker could be dormant in your environment, meaning compromise your environment for 6 months. You have no idea they're sitting there. They're watching. Right. And why are they watching? Because they want to see, and they want to basically watch how you operate.
Right.
Listen and read the lingo, read the emails, read the way that the communication, how you talk to them, and how others communicate. And they're doing that because they're trying to profile.
Right.
So if I want to send an email to you, now I know how to talk to you. And if you and me have a specific way of talking, now I know how to talk to you. This is a perfect case because this happened to a company a few years ago where a CFO and a CEO that buy property. And they use a program called Deepfake. I know you've probably heard about it. And the attacker basically did exactly that. They were monitoring and listening to their conversations and to their Teams calls and their meetings. And they were just monitoring and listening. They had specific names for each other. They deepfaked them. So someone deepfaked the CFO, which it wasn't uncommon for the CEO to buy a property, a building, a warehouse for $500,000, $1 million, $1.5 million. Wasn't uncommon. How come they say wire this money to his account?
Right.
We're buying this property. So what did the attacker do? He called in, as was it, and acted like if he was the CEO. The CFO didn't question it and wired the money. $500,000. How did he get caught? He got caught because he called a little while later and asked for another $500,000. So then it provides awareness, like, okay, I just sent you $500,000. What do you need another $500,000 for? Why did you ask for $1 million for $1 million? What's going on? So then he questioned the second purchase. So then he called them on the cell phone. And the guy's like, I didn't ask for any money. What are you talking about? And that's when it all unveiled.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah, those is in terms of for the audience that we have, the students from business and IT and other areas. So let's go like very educational in that sense. So, number one thing, strong passwords. So, what is your recommendation for a good password?
Okay, good password. It's something called password entropy. So, do not use common things. Do not use dictionaries. Do not use those common words. Do not use your name. Don't use your family names. Don't use girlfriends. Don't use kids. Don't use any husband. Don't use any of that stuff. Use what we call phrases. So you can take maybe a word you like. Let's say I'm going to use a word, for example, like a hot dog. HOTDOG. H, you got one word. O, you got one word. T, you got one word. And at the end of the word, you put a number, symbol. That could be your method. So now you know that your keyword is hot dog, but then you know that each letter it represents a word.
Right.
Now you have an exponential password that's really long.
Right.
So now you went from a basically a 6-digit or a 6-character, 12-character password now to a 32, let's say 42-character password. You've exponentially increased the length of that
Absolutely,
password.
yeah.
So for every character you increase your password, you will have multiplied to the 75th power. That's how many more possibilities you've added.
Right.
So you increase the complexity.
Yeah.
So password. That's the easy way.
That's what number one. So guys, password generation, password management, and obviously you have many passwords, banks and school and this and that. So make sure that you have. Some people use a rule, like you said. I use a rule generator that kind of generates different passwords. Very important, very strong password. Let's talk about MFA, multi-factor authentication. Explain to our audience about what is MFA, how it works, and
so MFA, you can use push notification. You can use like an app on your phone.
Right.
But basically, anything that forces you to have another method of authentication.
Right.
More than one factor: username, password, and other factor. It's something you know, something you have, something you are, and somewhere you are. There's 4 factors there. Somewhere you are indicates the place that you are or the IP you have. Something you have could be your username, something you have, something you know could be your password, and something you are is your biometric. So if you're logging in, it may force you to have fingerprint.
Right.
It may force you to know a PIN or a token. It's multiple factors to gain access.
Right.
That way, if an attacker does get your username and your password, they still need your biometric and they still need your location.
Right.
If they still compromise the location, you still need your biometric.
Right.
That's another factor. So there's MFA.
Right.
So there's apps. You can use Google Authenticator, you use Microsoft Authenticator. Those are pretty good
I
ones.
use, for example, Microsoft Authenticator. Most of my passwords have MFA. One other thing I want to ask you about is the backups. For example, what's your recommendation? That's something I always tell people: do the backups, regular backups.
So people say
most do not do. So what do you recommend in terms of backing up the data?
3-2-1. The concept 3-2-1. 3 copies of your backup, 1 locally. Well, 3 copies, 2 physical copies, one at least one in the cloud, and 1 of those physical copies away from you.
Right.
That way, it's completely separated.
Right.
Somewhere you can trust. That's it. That way, if your copy you have, the copy away from you, and a copy in the cloud.
Right.
That way, you have 3 copies.
Right. And you do it on a regular basis. What frequency do you recommend that people do the backups?
That's really on you. If you're going to follow the 3-2-1 concept, I would say it depends on how much data you generate. If you're not generating a lot of data, then I would say do it monthly. If you're doing a lot of data generation, then more often.
Right.
It just depends on how much you generate.
Right.
I do live backup. Constant live backup.
Yeah, I do it every 3 days or so. Every 3 days, I back up all my data and also back up an external location, so that's not really on your own computer, etc. One thing I want to ask you about is another tool that people don't understand very well, but I think is very important, is about the VPN, the virtual private network. So tell us a little bit about VPNs. You can buy them commercially, install them. So tell the users the benefits.
Okay, so VPN is very simple. How do you get from one point A to point B? The best way I can explain to you VPN, I'm going to give you the simplest form to understand it. How does water get from one point to another when you're using a garden hose? You plug in the hose to the faucet, you take the hose to the other side. While the water's traveling through the garden hose, is it leaking? No.
Right.
The hose keeps it inside. It keeps it encapsulated. When the water gets to the other end, water comes out. That's kind of what a VPN does, called tunneling.
Right.
It creates an encrypted tunnel, and then as the data goes through there, it's protected. When it reaches the other end, wherever that is, wherever you choose to come out, that's where the data recedes. VPNs provide you that encrypted traffic. If you do have to get on a public Wi-Fi, use a VPN.
Right.
They sell hardware VPNs, which is basically a little box you carry with you, a little box. You charge it like a little MiFi. You hook your device to that, not physically, wirelessly, or you can do it or physically. And then that device connects to the public Wi-Fi.
Right.
And you go through there. And that's a method you can use at a hotel, which, trust me, hotels don't have very good Wi-Fi. They don't have very good protection. Don't trust them. So that's a way you can get around that. That's what a VPN does. It puts you somewhere else, and it protects your traffic. It doesn't matter if you're trying to use a VPN to go to another country. That's a different story. It does do that, but the idea of a VPN is to encrypt your traffic. to keep you safe so no one can see inside that traffic.
Right. Yeah, that's another point. Tell us a little bit about the malware, the anti-malwares, right? Those software tools, many of them are known, like Norton's and F5s and CrowdStrike, et cetera. What is the recommendation?
Well, I recommend having one. That's the first thing.
Right.
All of them have the same data.
Right.
And regardless of who you get, they all have the same. Because they all have to have the same. The government mandates they all have the same signatures. So it's called a threat intelligence, because it has to, companies like VirusTotal, McAfee, Symantec, all these companies have to share all that virus information. No one can have, I have this, you don't have it. They have to have it. They have to share that. It's called threat intelligence. One of the biggest companies that share, believe it or not, is Facebook.
Right.
Why? Because that's what they do. They're a big sharing company. That's what they do best. So what are they sharing? They're sharing signature data. So there's two ways you can identify malware. You can identify either by behavior,
right,
or you identify by signature.
Right.
A file signature that says that this file has this type of, basically this data matches this kind of malware, so now you are malware. We'll flag you as this. It may not be malware, but because you have just enough code that matches it, we're gonna flag you. Behavioral means that it's heuristics. It means that the way you're acting kind of looks a little suspicious, so we're gonna flag you. So that's how the antivirus works. Which one's better, which one's worse? It really comes down to the most important thing. I say if you're gonna really if you're looking for an antivirus and you're in the market to look for one, look up something called the Magic Quadrant. Google the Magic Quadrant and look up endpoint detection, EDR. And every year, the Magic Quadrant puts out the top 10 best. And they give you the rankings. And you can pick the one that fits your bill.
Right.
Budget and contenders.
Right.
And you can see for yourself which one you like best. And I hate to say this, and it's going to sound, some people are going to laugh, but Microsoft has been in the top 10 almost every year.
Right.
They've actually been a top 3. And it's kind of funny to say that, but Defender has been a top 3.
Yeah, and I still remember many, many years ago when Microsoft was seen as a company that it was no security, the browser was a big problem.
But they've invested.
They invested a lot of money.
Definitely
Definitely invested money. And things have improved quite a bit.
Yeah.
One thing I want to just, before we finish and open for questions, the challenges of social engineering. So I think this is a wide space, right? Social engineering, there's so many methods. How would you kind of frame for our users, for individuals, to protect themselves against social engineering?
Okay, so remember that it's psychological.
Right.
We are humans. We try to connect. And the perfect example is if you go to a supermarket, you go anywhere, if someone tries to talk to you, you naturally want to communicate. You want to, hey, yeah. If you go to a supermarket and, hey, how you doing? Is that any good? You say you would talk. You'll answer because naturally we're built that way.
Right.
You have to fight it. You can say, no, I'm sorry. People are going to try to trigger you into talking. They're going to try and get information out of you. The more information they get out of you, the more they win. It could be the ridiculous information. They may try and find out what you like. They may try and find out questions about colors, drinks, whatever. Ridiculous items. But if you really think about it, some of the questions they're asking are the same kind of security questions they ask you when you set up your passwords. They're trying to find out answers. And they're not really giving you much information, but they're making conversation. They make you feel like you're in the conversation.
Right.
By gaining trust. So social engineering is just basically gaining trust of somebody psychologically to give you information. And the more they talk, the more you talk, the more the conversation. And if you lean in, you look, and you feel more connected, you automatically start giving out more.
That's right. That's right.
So it's all psychological.
Exactly. That's a good point. And then final, before I open for questions, I was forgetting this one. What is your general recommendations about social media and how people should behave or work or do or use Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, all these tools that everybody has, the pictures, the birthdays and family?
Okay, here's simple. If you guys are going to get into the professional environments, you got to think of this much. Look at other states. Florida's not in this. But if you look at other states, they are now looking at your social media.
Right.
They are now looking at your profiles. They're looking at your online content. They're looking at your online activities, and they're reviewing, are you what kind of person? They're profiling you as part of your background checks. Is that what you want an employer to see? If you're okay with it, that's on you. That's fast for employment. If you don't worry about that, that's fine. But from a protection standpoint, think of this much. The more you give, the more people know.
Right.
The more you put out there, not only people know, but now data, scraping. People can find out more about you. People can use the photos against you. People can use that data against you.
Right.
And I don't have to be your friend. But if that friend is your friend, I know through that person. And guess what? I can go through that person to get to your data. And that is pretty simple. The last component. If a person creates a social media account, let's say it's a beautiful person, whatever. They've only been on social media for 2 days. And they want to become your friend. How did you find me? Who are you? You realize that attackers, and also, I'm not going to say who, it's a government, but I'm going to say entities, use what's called an avatar. They take what's people is called not a real person, and they make fake people, AI people. They'll make a social media person, and they'll try to become your friend. And if you accept it, and now they see everything you post is now publicly available to them. And all that data they can pull and scrape, and guess what? What is really private anymore?
Exactly. And one thing I want to mention before now I'm going to open for questions is LinkedIn as well. Many times, all of us get invitations from people that we don't know. And I always do a very deliberate analysis of people that are inviting me to connect. And many of them do not exist. When you try to find them, you don't find anywhere. Those individuals were somehow created LinkedIn. They have a photo, they have a name, and you look at the backgrounds, you look at the details, they don't exist. So, and many times they may be recruiters, they may be people looking for helping you to find a job, or they have a job for you and they simply want to help you. And all of a sudden the communication starts, right? And you send their resume, etc. And there's a lot of information about you just there, and go on, right?
So there's an attack that's actually the FBI put it out there a few months ago. What it is that there's avatars that are actually coming out after no recruits, students and everybody trying to get jobs. And they're doing is they're sending you real job applications. Hey, I see you're in this field. Apply. I got this job opening. We're looking for people in this field. You apply. They get, we love this. They'll do an interview, and it's actually an AI. And if you notice, there's an AI called Lullaby, and there's another AI that it's an AI person talking to you. And you do your interview, and all of a sudden, they liked you. They send you the acceptance letter. You get hired. Send me the I-9. Send me the information. You fill it all out. And what's on an I-9?
The Social Security. Just
and
like that.
What else do you got to send?
All the passport number, all your ID number, and everything.
Bingo. And now, what did you just give the attacker?
Yeah. But a big key about all your stuff.
You're working.
Yeah.
And what they'll do is they'll say, hey, here, I want you to go ahead and buy your hardware you need for work. Send me the receipts, and we're gonna pay you for them. You spend all this money on all this hardware. You get all set up. You start working. You send the receipts. What happens? Nothing. You spent your money and no job, no reimbursement. You basically wasted your time, wasted your money, and you give up all your
information and share precious information. So this is fascinating. I love this stuff because it goes on and on and on, and it's going to be becoming more and more complicated as we progress. So I want to open to questions from our audience, from the classes that we have here, quite a number of people. If they have any questions to Ivan, feel free to ask them. Ivan, just to recap, he's one of our alumni. It's always great to have you back here to talk to us about an important area. So anybody has any questions, feel free to ask via the chat or live, and we'll make sure that we...
I do have a question.
Yes.
First of all, thank you for sharing all that information. It's very important. So how about people who may think that they're not on a public IP, or using a public Wi-Fi, and they turn it off and they say, well, I'm using my own data, it should be secure. Is that a myth or is that a fact?
Go ahead, Ivan.
That's a myth. We can still see it. You can use IoT to scan that frequency, and we can read the data live. You can put a wireless adapter in what's called listening mode, and you can listen to all that wireless traffic from somebody else. Just because you're not on the public Wi-Fi and you're on your own signal, it's just understand that Wi-Fi is not a magic connection. It's a radio. Just like you tune your radio for a different radio station, it's another frequency. All you have to do is listen to the other frequency, and now you have that data. That's all you got to do.
Right.
That's all it is.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it's a myth.
Thanks for debunking the myth, because I have some friends that when they're outside, when they're on the road, or when they're traveling, they're afraid of connecting to the public Wi-Fi, but they say I'm using my own data, so I'm safe. And
you want to know how you know you're safe? Put your device inside of an actual what's called a Faraday cage. It's a metal enclosed case where it can't communicate. Even your phone turned off, it's still communicating.
wow.
You realize that Apple has that feature where it will still call home, thinking that if you're lost, they can still find you. You do realize that, right? It's called the SOS function. It'll still call home. So, is it ever really off? Why do you think the battery can't be removed?
Exactly. More questions to Ivan.
You're welcome.
Any other question from anybody?
I have a student who has a question. Sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah.
If one thinks that his phone is hacked, his iPhone is hacked, what's the solution for that?
Okay, so the question is,
For example,
sorry.
It functions by itself, it goes to certain apps by itself, and for example, if I press YouTube, it goes to a certain app, I don't know, but I'm sure I pressed YouTube. And that's
So her question is, how do you know if your iPhone is hacked? Because sometimes she presses, she wants to go to YouTube and it goes somewhere else, or it goes to a place that she didn't actually want it to go.
Okay. If you suspect your phone is compromised, that's just, for me, that's enough. From what I can tell you, if you think your phone has a problem, if you think your device has been compromised, if you think your phone has any issues, first off, do you have iCloud? That's the first question. If you do have iCloud, reload your phone from scratch. Plug it in, get it to your computer, put it in DFU mode, and factory reset it. Restore from iCloud. You're back in business. That's it. There's no more infection. That's an iPhone. Android, same thing. You have your backups. That's why we do backups. The moment you start thinking, it's called indicator of compromise. In the forensic space, we call that an IOC, because it begins what's called an IOA, indicator of attack, which your phone starts acting funny. You start getting these little weird things. Why is it running slow? Why is it doing this? Why is it doing that? You don't realize it. You're like, maybe it's just, maybe it's a program, maybe it's something, whatever. You don't think about it. Then all of a sudden, this is weird. What's going on here? It turns into an indicator of compromise. Then you start thinking, okay, now this is not right. And once you've been compromised, either you have two options. Either you do a forensics dump, you do a memory dump, and you do the forensic work, which I can guarantee you, from a user standpoint, you're not going to do the forensic work. And you're not going to pay a forensic investigator to do the forensics on your phone. And it's going to be very costly. The easy way of doing this, restart from backup, start from scratch, get back in business. You lose maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes of your time. That's it. And I mean, it's the safest bet right there. If you have a doubt, that's the safest bet.
Right.
Now, if you really want to go the route of forensic work, I mean, you're probably looking at about well over $1,000 or more of time spent doing forensics.
Right.
And I'm not saying it's a bad idea. It's a good idea. But do you really want to invest that kind of money on that kind of action? Or do you want to just get back to using your phone and get back into a safe environment? I mean, your sanity and your money is where we're looking at. Okay? If you don't feel comfortable, then resort from backup.
Right.
That's the safest thing you could do.
Right.
All right, excellent. Ivan, thank you so much. Thank you, Alex.
Any other questions from anybody before we finish our session today? Anybody? Any questions? I think, Paul?
We do have one question. Professor Hampton Slack, go ahead.
Yes.
So they talk about VPN that it helps protect your phone or data. How would you tell about using VPN in smartphone?
It's a benefit because you're encrypting your data and you're making sure that that traffic is secure.
Right.
The most important thing you got to realize is that your data is open, no matter how you send your data. If it's through Wi-Fi, if it's through 4G, 5G, whatever it is, it could be going to the next technology. It's still going to be just data. Who are you going to trust? Are you going to trust your provider? Are you really going to trust them? I mean, think about it. They're going to know exactly where you're going. The moment you put in google.com or the moment you put in msn.com, wherever you do, they know where you're going because you're sending that DNS query. And if you're on Wi-Fi, the moment you put in wherever you want to go, now they know where you went. That's the problem. By using a VPN, you're encrypting that traffic where they can't see it. So now you're sending that traffic somewhere else. So now your provider can't see where you're going. No one can see your traffic. And if someone's trying to see it, they have to know where you're coming out, the location your traffic is exiting, and look at it at that point. That's what the whole point of all this is. By it being completely encased in encryption, it's hard to see it.
Right.
They basically have to break the encryption, which not easy, and then get through it.
Right, right. And another thing I want to tell you is that I think pretty much all the VPN tools, I won't mention names because I want to, do a marketing or promotion for any of the tools, but they have the mobile, you can install in multiple devices, like your computer, mobile, etc.
One of the ones that I use, I'll tell you one that I use. I like there's one that's 1.1.1.1 by Cloudflare.
Right.
They have one that's really good. It's fast, it's good, it's simple, and to be honest with you, the reason why I like them so well is because they've actually been the one that's been most reputable.
Right.
You look at the Magic Quadrant, they're the leader in the industry. That's it. I think Norid or one of the ones, they've been compromised recently. Most of the VPN companies, they've been compromised very recently.
Yeah.
They're the only ones in the industry that have been pretty stable.
Right.
So that gives you one if you want to research them.
Right. Okay. So any other questions before we finish our session tonight?
Yeah. I wish to know what advice can you give to someone who wants to pursue a route in cybersecurity?
You want to pursue a route in cybersecurity. The question comes down to is, if you want to pursue a route in cybersecurity, what area of cybersecurity first off? There's multiple areas, like everything else. Like if you're going to medical field, what do you want to go into? You want to go into surgical? Do you want to go into general? Do you want to go into what's specialty? That's the question I always ask. Secondly, if you don't know, then you got to kind of have to feel your way through what you like, and then pursue it. The other component, if this is what you like, start listening to conferences, start listening to the industry, start going to SANS website and start attending the free conferences, start listening to DEF CON conferences, start listening to all these conferences to kind of get immersed in the environment. And then you kind of get an idea of what's going on. And from there, you can start pivoting. Lastly, once you have that kind of mindset, you got to realize that everything is basically compromised. You got to get a strong basis. You got to start building your Windows bases. You got to start building your networking bases, cloud, Linux, every component. You got to build a strong base on everything. Once you get that strong base on all your environments, all your platforms, then you start building up. You start building the rest of the technology stack. Then from that technology stack, then you start pivoting into the cyberspace. Because if you don't have a strong foundation of technology, what good is anything else?
Right.
I can teach you how to, build payloads and build all these different forensic scripts and that's great. But if you don't understand what an Active Directory server is, then how is this payload going to affect, or how are you going to get into that, how are you going to get into it? I can teach you how to compromise, build a networking switch, how to configure a switch, how to configure a cloud server. But if you don't know what you're building or don't understand it, it's foundational.
Right.
You got to build the foundational pieces, and then you stack up.
Right.
But at that point, you understand what you need, and you have a strong understanding of what you like.
Right. Yeah. All right, guys. So we're gonna end up the session tonight. So again, one more time, Ivan, thanks for coming here. As just to let everybody know again that Ivan was one of our students. So when did you graduate? 2018, right?
Yeah,
2018, a long time ago. But good that you're back here.
Yeah.
You're gonna come more often. We're
Yeah.
gonna bring you back. We're gonna have lots of conversations in the future. So everybody, thanks for your time. Thanks for the opportunity for one of those AU talks. And I'll see you then next time. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a great evening. I'll see you back in class. And again, Ivan, thanks very much for your presentation.
Thank you for having me.